Hi. So I was asked again about my art process and the brushes and stuff that I use. So I've pulled up Clip Studio, and I think the easiest way is just to show you. It's not complicated. I have some lace brushes that I use sometimes, that I downloaded that were free. Um, but almost all the brushes I use are just in Clip Studio the way it comes. So easy enough for me to show you what they are. I often use the pen tool, um, and the bigger you make it, the more sensitive it is to pressure. So when it's smaller, it won't get quite as big or as small. Um, but I often work at a really low resolution, and when you get a little bit closer, you can see that the pixels there. So it's not aliased. When I use the pen tool, I often use that tool because I like to use the fill tool, and the aliasing makes it a little more difficult, although Clip Studio is really good about it. Another tool I like to use is the pencil tool, and these are all like the default brushes. Um, it depends on what I'm going for. If I want like a softer line, I might use a different pencil. Sometimes I just want kind of a sketchy look, so the pencil's good for that. The pencil has great texture, so if you make it huge, you can get some texture. And I often use the airbrush tool as well. When the airbrush tool is big, you can get a nice, the bigger it is, the softer it is, the more of a soft gradient it is. So I'll make it bigger when I want like a really soft look. But if you make it really small, I find that it's actually like fun to use as like a lining brush actually. So don't underestimate the airbrush tool. I find it really fun to use. Like if you make it small, it behaves in a completely different way than when it's big. And I find that's true for a lot of like clip brushes. So the canvas size will kind of determine how the picture ends up looking in the end. And I like to mix like hard and soft lines. Like I don't really stick to cell shading or like rendered shading. Uh, I don't know if there's anything more that I can tell you. I often use the gradient tool. Um, oh yeah, and the smudge tool. So I use the smudge tool and the let me show you, the airbrush tool together, uh, so you can get sort of like even softer than the airbrush tool. Sort of feels almost like working with charcoal. And yeah, I do merge my layers. I typically only draw on like 1 to 3 layers, if that. That's a lot for me. And I'll merge as I work so that I can just work on the whole thing like the way it is. If there's a background, I will put that on a different layer because it begins to hinder me. But pretty much every decision I make is based on convenience. Like, what's the fastest uh, way for me to get the feeling that I want, the lighting that I want, because if it takes too much time, I'll lose interest. So speed is really, really important, and that's probably why I don't really mess with the settings at all. I think these are probably the default settings. I might have messed with them at some point, but yeah, anti-aliasing for the pen tool. I don't mess with the pencil's settings at all, and very rarely I will use a brush tool. This is typically like if I have like a shine or something like that. to do, and I want to like blur it out a little bit, I'll use the brush tool, and then I'll go ahead and use the blur tool, which is much better, but it does like kind of, you will lose definition a bit, so hopefully that's what you're going for. And then yeah, so all pretty basic tools, and I like digital art, but I prefer traditional, and I feel like that might come across in my art, so yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but those were all my brushes and stuff that I use basically, and I pretty much only use Clip Studio. I'll use Procreate if I need to use like a symmetry tool or something like that, because I can't figure it out in Clip. But I don't do anything complicated at all in Clip, so I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.